You're listening to the Primal Happiness Show, a podcast dedicated to helping you thrive in this crazy modern world. Every Tuesday, we explore the nature of how our minds really work, what exactly the human animal requires to thrive, and how we can live happier and more fulfilling lives. If you're new here and haven't yet taken our free class, then there's no better place to get a jump start on reclaiming your primal happiness. It's where we'll guide you step by step through our antidote to today's modern world. Simply head on over to primalhappiness.co/antidote to get the free class and discover how to thrive without having to move to a planet that's not so crazy as ours. But now, your host, Leanne Brook-Tyler.
Hello, my beautiful people. A huge warm welcome back to the show. In today's crazy modern world, men and women are living shallow, disconnected, and unfulfilling lives. So we created the path for those who are ready to reclaim their primal power and actualize their deepest gifts. Just to let you know, Waking the Wild Masculine and Waking the Wild Feminine are now both sold out. However, if you missed out on those and are feeling ready to go deeper with myself and Jonathan to reclaim your primal power and actualize your deepest gifts, go along to primalhappiness.co/go deeper, or you can book a free exploration call with one of us. Just go along to primalhappiness.co/exploration and pick a time and date to suit you. And just a little heads up, we have a brand new offering that we're just in the throes of creating. It's called Waking the Wild Sovereign, and it's very much the pinnacle of our work. It's the deepest, most intimate, and most impactful way you can work with us. I'll be sharing more on that very soon. And now on to this week's show. It's a really special one with the wonderful Sabrina Lynn, founder of ReWilding For Women. Sabrina has had a profound impact on thousands of women across the globe. She is one of the most provocative, raw, and passionate personal development trainers in the world. Known internationally for her unique workshops on spiritual growth, reclamation of the divine feminine, and the awakening path that is unique to women, Sabrina has designed and developed remarkably effective transformational practices that address awakening in mind, body, and heart. In this show, and I think it's Sabrina's third time on the show, I think it is, maybe fourth actually, we spoke about recent events in Sabrina's business, also known as her soul child, how she's navigated the conflict from a place of creating altitude on it rather than taking it personally, understanding what's in alignment with her deeper truth, which ultimately could be summed up as how to live a soul-led life. For any of us who are deepening into this way of living and being, Sabrina's story is a wonderful one to learn from and be inspired by. I love this one. I really did. I hope you do too. Hello, Sabrina. Welcome back.
Oh, Leanne, it's so good to be back here with you. I absolutely love these episodes.
Me too. I was sharing with you just before we started. I've been having a bit of a day with it. And I was just thinking, you know what? It's going to be like taking a warm bath, being able to connect with Sabrina. So it's all good.
Until we both start crying.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah,
it'll be a warm bath with tears.
Yeah.
With tears.
That's a bonus, I think. So we have got... I was just taking a moment to think like how to even describe what we're about to talk about. I feel, firstly, I really want to acknowledge your generosity in sharing something that's like very personal and a very like big thing that you're going through, like literally as we're talking. So I just want to give that heads up to the listeners. Like this is something that like happened a year ago and is done and dusted. You're like in it and been very generous in agreeing to like come on the show and share what's going on for you.
And hence the comment about the tears. So just to let everyone know, that was the comment about the tears until we both start crying, because it is really so raw at the moment. Like it's really still very raw, very present, still in it. just like you were saying. So, and I just want to, send my gratitude right back to you for asking and for holding this space, and it just feeling really perfect. Like there is some gold, like you and I were saying, that there really is some gold to share here with others. And I know that you have this amazing ability to gently and beautifully and lovingly like tease that out amidst the tears. So
I will do what I can. And I think even just before we go in, I was just thinking, isn't that a gorgeous example of when we're able to be open-hearted and authentic and really share of ourselves, that the way that I reached out to you knowing it may not be good timing, knowing it may not land well, and it might almost seem a bit like, as if I'm like jumping into your pain and like, come on my show and talk about your pain. And, obviously I really wanted to talk to you and I felt like it'd be really useful, but I clearly didn't want it to land that way. But then the way you were able to receive it in the way that it was intended, I think that whole thing is just such a gorgeous example of what's possible when we're able to kind of show up in this like just vulnerable way.
Oh, Lynn, it came so very much across like that. And also this feeling in myself of, wow, this woman sees me. Like she sees me. And just the way that you did it with that deep compassion and care, but still like, hey, there might be something here. How does this feel for you? And it was, it was a no-brainer. It was just, let's go there. Let's do this.
Let's do this. Indeed. So where should we start? We were just reflecting on the kind of timeline of events that led up to this. And obviously I only know it from what went down on the outside, sort of seeing what happened in the group. But I think it'd be really helpful just to set the scene a bit so listeners have a sense of kind of what led up to your current like position. And it feels like there's I guess almost like there's a sort of pregnancy here at the moment, it feels like for you. So start wherever you want and share up until this point.
I wonder, Lynn, if it's useful, like maybe just checking in with you, what feels most useful for the listeners? Does it feel most useful to hear from your kind of viewpoint, or does it feel more useful to hear from my viewpoint first? Like, is it, I'm just asking you for your listeners and what.
Oh, I like that. You know what? I think that's an interesting idea. I think I'll share that from my perspective first, because I think that's what led me to reach out to you, because I could see there was some deep stuff going on. And I don't think that's necessarily how everyone witnessed it or witnesses events of this kind. So I think that in itself would be helpful. So let me quickly give a timeline of events from the kind of outside, and then let's like deepen into what was going on for you.
That feels great. That feels perfect to me.
So I am a member of your incredibly vibrant Facebook group. I mean, it really is. I think you said 40,000 members, and I think that's grown fast. I think I've been in it maybe 2 years now, and it's like just feels like it's rapidly, boom, expanded. And it's a very really busy, gorgeous. It's almost like an extended expression of you is how it always felt up until maybe quite recently, which is where we're going to get into soon. And from my recollection, there'd been. Because the topic is rewilding for women, there's a real mixture, absolute real mixture of posts that go in there. Sometimes it can be, relationship advice. Sometimes it can be, various forms of like trauma healing, all sorts. And it felt like there'd been a kind of little bit of a trend maybe of posts about free bleeding. But there was one in particular where the woman who shared it had posted a picture which actually showed a kind of it was actually really beautiful, like a kind of swirl of blood going down her leg. And there was a kind of, who knows in terms of percentages, but there was like a sizable amount of women who objected to it and said it triggered them. Some, I think, just found it distasteful. And some of them, I think, had a very understandable sort of triggering around seeing that sight of blood going down a woman's leg. And then I know that got pulled, and the reason you gave, you did a Facebook Live about it and said that Elise, one of the women on your team, had decided to pull it back. You shared what was going on behind the scenes and the fact that as a team you decided not do that and to not censor in that way, and had kind of almost like, I suppose, rewritten your policy as a result of that. You invited the woman to repost it, which she did. And then you really kind of like generously kind of, took that message out. I remember seeing it on places like Instagram as well. And it felt like, oh, everything's now going to carry on, trundle along as if that never really happened. And then I noticed there was a kind of almost like a spate then of other sort of related posts. And then also this kind of alongside this continued like complaints from women about, this isn't what I'm here for, if this is what this group's turning into, I don't know if it's for me. And then other women saying, well, it is meant to be through rewilding. What if this isn't? So that just started to happen. And then it seemed from the outside, like suddenly you did a post and a live saying it's time actually to really take stock and notice what this group's become and check in and see if this is actually kind of what we want to be creating. Is it still in alignment? Is it still a path with heart?
Yeah.
And that was really, and then I think you just said, I hadn't seen anything since, but I think that's still the kind of holding pattern you're in.
Yeah.
And it was that made me think, oh, I would love to know. I can really deeply respect Sabrina being so courageous to almost like risk a group of that kind. I mean, that's for most businesses, that's gold. And prepare to say, right now, I'm not sure. I don't know whether this is true for me anymore. We're going to take that time. And so I'd love to know, take it from whichever point you want and tell me what was going on for you.
Yeah. Really trying to feel into what is most useful, most relevant. What stood out for me, what you were saying, was a couple of things. But one thing was, for most businesses, having a Facebook group of 40,000 active members, not that everybody's active in there, but 40,000 active members in a very vibrant, very engaged Facebook group is gold for most businesses. And I think for most businesses, and I know for myself, probably 10 years ago, I would have looked at our Facebook group in those terms of, wow, this is a funnel into rewilding. And of course, on one level, it is that. But for me, it's really, okay, this is a big representation of our community. And this has our name on it. And everything that gets posted in here is linked to us. Like energetically, everything posted in this space, this container, I'd like to call it, look, I know it's a Facebook group, I know it's on social media, but I like to think of everything that we do in rewilding as a sacred space. Mm-hmm. So we have many Facebook groups. So every retreat that comes together, every in-person event that comes together as retreat style, they have their own Facebook group. And that's a sacred space to me. Mm-hmm. It's a sacred container. When we step into there, we step in with a different sort of energy than we would when we step into the grocery store. Mm-hmm. Or, we step into an argument with our mom. We hold ourselves to a different level when we step into this sacred container. And yes, we can speak truths. And yes, we can say, shit, I'm struggling. Like, I'd love some support. But we hold ourselves in a very different light than, just like some possibly, if you want to think of like low level conversations where you're not holding yourself accountable. It's always the other person's fault. It's the blame game, or it's the victimhood, or it's the, all of those sorts of spaces. And we're human. So that's part of humanity.
Can I just, I just have to say, I absolutely love what you're saying. And it's funny because I've just started a Facebook group for my next, like I lead a kind of, it's cross between a kind of training course and a circle, which starts at the 18th of November. And I've just opened the Facebook group for it. And with the same, sense of intentionality. And literally one of the things I asked them to agree to have a set of agreements. And one of them is we kind of enter this sacred space with intention. Because it's not the norm. It's not how we conduct ourselves in this everyday world. And this sense of kind of ritual and ceremony and coming into a space with intention is so lacking. So I love everything you've said there. And I love the way that for you, yes, it may be on Facebook, which generally lacks all of those ingredients, but the way that you hold even a group of that kind, and it's a free group as well, you still hold it with that same degree of intentionality. So I just like deeply honor you for saying that. And yeah, I feel exactly the same way.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Lynn. It's been a really interesting journey with our Facebook group as it's grown, because it started out as something very, very different to what it is now. And that was a lot of what I was sharing when we were closing or just stopping posts and just getting really silent and going really quiet in the group. This was actually founded by women who were at rewilding events. And it was founded for them to connect and for them to support each other post these big, intense journeys that they had just been on. So that was the original intention of the group. And that's very different energetics to hold than where the group was at a month ago when we decided to switch things off or get really quiet and go internal. And part of the process for me was really, and this was definitely a learning experience for me, was really where I was dragging my feet, holding on to what it was and trying to keep it what it was and keep the energetics what they were and the sacred space that it was. Like almost clinging in a way, Leanne, like holding on too long to it. Meanwhile, it had morphed and it had changed and in a million different ways, and it had grown. I mean, when we first started, obviously there was two people in there, me and the woman who was helping me do some work in the backside of rewilding. That was it. And then, at the time we shut this down, there was 40,000 members in it. That's obviously drastically different. Very different energetics. A very different space to be held. And what I was holding on to, and that was just one of my learnings, was really allowing for that transformation, giving the space for it to change, and almost like stepping back from an impersonal place, like getting really impersonal about it, because it was personal for me. That's my baby. Rewilding is, I've birthed rewilding, and the Facebook group is a part of that. And so it's this child that you've birthed. And I always crack these jokes that I'm one of those over-mothering mothers that like never wants her kid to grow up, which I've learned about myself over these years of holding on to. And it's like, but no, I don't want you to go to school.
Yeah.
We're good. Like, we're good here hanging out at home, me teaching you the alphabet. You don't need to go to school. But the kid was going to school with or without me. Like, the bus was coming to pick up the kid, and the kid was getting on the bus with or without me. And that was really what happened. And it happened right around Rewilding's 4th birthday. So I find that to be just rather hilarious in the timing of that.
Yeah.
Right? Like the preschool years, like, oh shit, the kid really is leaving. And then really taking stock, like you had said, of, is this rewilding? Because conversations that were happening in there and the way that things were being expressed, that would never happen on a rewilding retreat. That would never happen over lunch on a rewilding retreat. It would never happen in the downtime on a retreat. It would never happen in the car ride when women are sharing rides from the airport to go to retreat. That would not happen.
I suspect even within a Facebook group of women who had been to a retreat.
Exactly, Leanne. And so, and really feeling it's a wild thing to be outside of this thing that you create and feeling into it. And almost you can feel, I'm such a sensitive being. I'm trained to be incredibly sensitive. That's my work in the world. So I have to be. I don't have to be, I want to be. And to feel, especially this free bleed and what came about from there, it was the amount of energy coming at my team, the amount of energy from 40,000 women coming at my team, coming at the rewilding team, coming at myself. It was a lot. That's a lot of energy that was coming at us. So when we get backlash, or when we, I don't even know what terms to call it, when we start to get feedback.
I think backlash, honestly, was, yeah. I was just recalling, thinking, no, like imagining it on the other side and thinking, because the emotions ran very high. There was a lot of anger, a lot of upset, righteousness, which is fine. But I think the expression of that wasn't always the most loving, responsible. And so I suspect for you, it absolutely would have landed as a backlash.
Yeah. Beautiful. And those are great words, Lynn, and thank you. And that was like that part of the other circles that we hold, the other Facebook groups that we hold. There's a level that we all hold ourselves to when we're communicating. There's a level of ownership in our shit, right? In our reactions, in our triggers, in our responses. There's a level of love that we speak with. We try. We're human, right? Like, of course we're going to mess up, but for us during that whole unfolding, that first post went out, that free bleed post, and it was beautifully written. So every single thing gets so incredibly felt into, and whether it makes it through to the group or it doesn't make it through to the group. And we've gotten really good over the years, Leanne, of knowing when the group's going to go wild, when it's going to be controversial. We know. And Elise, she goes, I need to brace myself. This one feels right. And that's all we can do, right? Is feel into everything, feel into the highest good of the group, feel into, is this right? Is this the highest thing that I can do in this moment is to approve this post? That's all we've got, right? Is our best decision in that moment. That's it.
Sure.
And so she came from that place and she goes, you know what? This is going to shake stuff up. I need to brace myself because I'm about to get lit up here, but it feels right. And we do that all of the time. So we've been doing that for years of, all right, team, brace yourself because it's coming. And we choose it when it's written from a high place and it can hold. Anyways, that's a whole other topic to kind of get into. But it went out and the response to that was 10 times what we thought it would be. And the response was how incredibly hurt women were. Like, this has brought up, I mean, I'm just going to get really graphic here. This is some of the stuff we were hearing. This brought up the time that I was raped and I was bleeding. This brought up the abuse that I received from my ex-husband. And this is what it looked like for me when I was sexually molested or anally raped, or all of these things were coming. Elise is a former police officer. So she comes with a very interesting set of experiences in how she holds space and how she makes decisions. We all make decisions from, experiences and all of that stuff. So she had made the decision, this is too much. Like, now there's too much, this has caused too much pain. And we, being that it's a Facebook group, if we were on a retreat, we can hold all of those wounds. We can hold the pain, the grief, the rage, the past life memories, the this life memories, the trauma. We can hold all of that. That's part of what the work is that we do in the world, is healing the deepest traumas that we have in ourselves. But in a Facebook group, we can't do that. It's not a possibility. It's not possible. Nor is it what we're called to do. And that was very clear. So nor is it what I'm sure someone could possibly figure out how to do that, but it's not our work. It's not for us to do that. And so she pulled the post, and then we got 10 times the amount of backlash on that. then it was, it's just so wild how it works. And you're censoring us. We thought this was rewilding for women. Some women were like, thank you so much. You have no idea what this means for me. This was the most painful thing I've ever been through, what this brought up for me. And I had no support around it. And then on the other side, it was, you're censoring, you're shutting down the feminine voice. If we can't do this here, where can we do it? And so it was just a wild ride. The most, probably, Leanne, to share from a personal standpoint, the most interesting thing for me was to be able to stand in such a place of love and understanding of both sides. And it was very impersonfor for me. So it didn't hurt. Had that happened 2 years ago, and when things like that did happen, because this has been going on since, for years. This is not new. I would be very hurt by it. It would be a very uncomfortable place for me to sit a couple of years ago. But this go around, nothing about it was uncomfortable. Nothing about it was painful for me. It was learning a lot about group mentality, learning a lot about almost mob kind of mentality. I mean, that was part of it. It was learning a lot about how much pain sits in the feminine, how much pain really sits in us, and how we really lack places to let that out and lack the tools to be able to release the repression that we've had for centuries and the oppression we've had for centuries and the trauma. It was really clear, like, wow, we are holding so much collectively. And this has become an outlet, which we find outlets all over the place. And some, for me, are safer, more supported, and also more direct, where you're really going into your own, because everything is really about you. It's just really how you're choosing to experience it, whether it's you're placing it externally to yourself, or we can call that projecting onto something else, or you're willing to take that sword of truth to self and go, right, this is bringing up the rape that I experienced. This is a doorway to open up to really intense trauma that I'm still holding on to. Or, oh shit, I thought I had done a lot of work on this. I didn't, this is showing me something. This is showing, right? Constantly bringing it back to self. What is this showing me? What is this showing me? What is this showing me? Instead of externally, like, you're a bad person, you're horrible, can't believe you would do that. And the woman who posted that, the amount of comments that she received, bless her soul. Like, her and I had the most amazing conversation in chat about this, and just like, hallelujah, sister, for doing what you're doing. There's this other piece of me, Leanne, that also sat back watching the perfection of it. So watching, and this is not something I could have done 2 years ago. I was way too attached to things and way too, clingy. But to watch the perfection of it and go, this is showing us something. Like, every woman's comment here is a gift to us. Every single comment, whether you were lighting Elise up, whether you were lighting me up, whether you were telling us that we were censoring the group, whether, every comment was such a gift. And for me, it's my way of reading the energy. I mean, everything that I do is constantly following what's in the highest, what's in the highest, what's in the highest. How can I read this energy? And you can only read the energy if you can be impersonal about it. Otherwise, you get stuck on the one thing and you're triggered and you can't even see. You're suddenly in the tornado, not outside of the tornado, watching the perfection of the tornado destroy or obliterate to bring about the new or those things. So it was really also just this real standing back and reading everything, reading the energy, really feeling, what is this showing me? What is this showing me? Right? This is the whole thing of bring it back to self. So it wasn't me going, oh, you all are just so mean, right? Like, how could our Facebook group be so mean to us? Like, not even a little bit. It wasn't that. It was, what is this showing me? What is this showing me? What is this showing me? All of this is just raw energy. It's raw energy happening in this way. It's unfolding in this way. And there's a perfection to it. Sabrina, what is that? What is the perfection? What is this showing you? What are you seeing? What's here?
Amazing. So before we move into what it was showing you, what I would, there's a number of things you said, which I think are so, we said at the start, there's going to be some real kind of nuggets of wisdom. And as you've said so much that I'm like, whoa, you could do a whole episode on this and a whole episode on that. So I just want to kind of highlight some of the bits that really stood out to me before we dive into the next piece. But I was going back to what you were saying at the start about a way of being with that kind of entering into a space of intention. I was thinking, I often talk about how we kind of almost need to be taught how to be in this way. It's not, sadly, it should be our birthright, but it's not how most of us were kind of raised to know how to be in this, like the way of counsel, the way of sitting in circle.
Yes.
To be responsible, to witness, not try to save, not try to blame, own your own stuff. And it's the reason I love leading circles, because I think what we learn sitting in circle is a skill that we can then take outside. We can take into a Facebook group and have that same degree of intentionality. And again, sadly lacking in this modern world, but I think something we can learn. And notice when that's not the dynamic. Notice when we're not showing up in that way, or we're in a space where other people don't understand the power in showing up well, or just haven't learned how to. So I was really just brought again back to oh wow, that's the difference, for women that have been to your retreats and then in a Facebook group around that, they've learned that. They understand That's what's required. They understand that's appropriate for that kind of space. A bigger group like that just, women from all around that may have never been in that way in real life aren't necessarily going to know that. And that's the result, isn't it? That's what you get. That's the energy that gets created from there. So I love that. The other thing I heard a quote earlier. I was listening to a podcast called the Embodiment Podcast, and the host of that, Mark Walsh, was actually a guest on my show. And I was listening to him interview, I can't remember the lady's name, amazing woman. And she said a quote that was something like, the dance is not the dancers, meaning that a kind of what we create collectively, there is a kind of bigger vibe or bigger energy or a bigger construct that happens in a crowd that's not the individuals. And and I was just like, wow, that's what's happened, isn't it? That the group is more than just these individuals. Then it's it's got its own force, its own energy. It's become its own thing.
Yes.
And which is then something completely different to be with.
Totally. That's it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so I just want to think if there's one more thing I wanted to say before we then dive into what you're seeing. I love and really see the wisdom over and over again in that kind of being able to kind of see what things that are creating that kind of activation or trigger within us, like what's it showing us about ourselves. And I read a gorgeous quote in book I love called Soulcraft that said our souls have so few ways to kind of like pull our attention and like take us into shadow. And it's like one of the ways is those times we're triggered and we can either go, oh, get away from the trigger, or we can say, okay, this is a time the soul's trying to tell me like it's time to descend, it's time to take a look.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And again, unfortunately, we're not shown that. The average person isn't shown the gifts of that. So, and how do you do that in a big Facebook group? How do you hold people through that? How do you love people through that? So, yeah, I just love, there's so much depth and so much wisdom in everything you shared. And again, I think all of these topics individually would be something on their own. Unfortunately, we don't have time, but I just wanted to acknowledge you, like so much juice there, it really is.
I'm so glad that you pulled those points out too. I was feeling like we need a pause. I feel like we need a recap because that was a lot of information. And Leanne, you just pulled perfectly like 3 points and let's bullet point this, bang, bang, bang. So yeah, I love that.
Gorgeous.
Is there anything that you feel to dive more into in any of that? Or does it feel best to move on?
I think if we do, it probably has to be a separate show. Because again, we're never going to get into your like this other ways. And I think we could well do a separate show on any of those. Maybe we will. But yeah, so as you said, you really saw this as an opportunity to learn, to say, what is this showing me?
Absolutely.
And then took that decision because just to say, you don't necessarily need to, but in the kind of, you sort of shared the process of events up until when you got kind of backlash for the post, the backlash for pulling it, and then a third backlash when it got posted again.
We couldn't win. There was no winning. There was no winning. We were... So that was when like we reached out to the original author of it and we said, hey, look, the team and I have sat down with everything that we've been told, all the bits of feedback, read every comment, read all of the bits. Elise wrote a really long apology saying, look, here was the process for me. This is what happened. We were completely transparent about this whole thing because that was important. That's always been very important for us, is total transparency with our community, with anybody who's hanging out with Rewilding. And so Elise wrote, here's my process. I went live and said, hey, here's what's going on in the background. Then we sat as a team, really felt into it. And we were like, you know what? We are edgy. And if we were going to really stay true to ourselves, that whole piece of you don't need the good opinion of others, really staying true to self, like really staying true of what feels right for us and getting totally clear and not worrying about anybody's opinion outside of what we feel we are here to hold space for, what we feel we are here to share out into the world. Would we have posted that? And the answer was a loud hell yes. We would have posted that and we would have kept it there. And so that was just such a beautiful clarifying moment for us as the team to go, this is us. It is who we are. And we do push the edges and we do push the boundaries. And we also will hold the consequences of that. Consequences being some women will leave the group and go, this is not for me. And that's okay. And all of the other consequences, all the comments that come into us and the emails that come back to us, we will hold that. We have to stand by those decisions. And so we reposted it and saying that very strongly, like, you know what, this is who we are and we will toe the mark. Like, this is who we are. And we're, and we are not for everybody. And we will be the first people to say that we are not for everybody. And so posted that. And then, then what you were kind of speaking to, Leanne, was the energetics in the group after that was really almost like split in half. It was just a really wild dynamic. And I am totally fine with people disagreeing. Of course. I love opposite opinions. I love the fact that both are usually true, right? It's just coming from a different perspective. I love those. We learn from other people's viewpoints. We learn about ourselves from that. But there's a healthy way to learn, and then there's a way that feels unhealthy and maybe like a bit unnecessary to me. Or maybe I shouldn't say unhealthy or unnecessary. Let me put it differently. That doesn't feel aligned with rewilding and the essence of rewilding and how we hold space. And those were the types of conversations felt to me like were starting to happen even more in our group. So that got louder. The controversial things got louder. The way we were speaking to each other wasn't from that respectful place. It was not respectful. And that's one of our biggest rules is this has to remain respectful. We do reserve the right to shut off comments. We do reserve the right to throw anybody out of this group when that respect is not honored. It's respecting others. It's really respecting self, respecting others. It's an important piece when you have 40,000 women having a loud conversation about controversial topics. And I had so then of course that was the next piece to feel into for us as a team. Like, okay, how much time are we now spending on this? Like, what amount of energy, resources, time are we dedicating to holding space for conversations that do not align with who we are, that do not have this respectful space? How many comments, emails are we receiving a day that this person did this thing to me? This person needs to be thrown out of the group. Reporting this, reporting that, and Elise really turned into a police officer. And her and I were
a previous career.
Her and I were having this conversation. She's like, Sabrina, I've gone full circle. Like the job that I worked my tail off to get out of, I'm back in. I'm policing. I spend all day, full time. Elise was managing the Facebook group.
Wow.
Full time managing the Facebook group. And really got to the guts of what that was energetically doing to her, what it was energetically doing to the team, what it was energetically, the effects that it was having energetically on us. And that was when we decided, time to go quiet. That's it. Time to go quiet. There's a complete reshuffling and a reevaluation and a getting very, very clear about who we are, who we're not, and really what we're here to do. What is it that we are here to do as rewilding? What are we here to do? And getting crystal clear about that, irregardless of consequences. So for me, it was really going, you know what? If I'm going to stand in this space, I have to be willing to completely turn off a 40,000 member Facebook group. I have to be willing to totally shut it down. If I'm going to step into truth, if I'm going to walk my talk, right? Like, I have to be willing to totally lose this. I have to be willing for whatever those consequences are. I have to be willing for that to happen. And that's what we went into when we completely shut no comments. And then the backlash for that. The comments about the no comments.
By then you'd expect that. Wow. I just want to say again, you know, we said this at the start, but I think it is beyond courage. I think even this word doesn't feel like it does enough justice, but like the authenticity, the like deep, deep, deep level of alignment that is manifest in those decisions, I think is incredible and so rare. And again, so that's why I really wanted to have your story on the podcast, because I think there's so much in this that is modeling this way of being that is, you know, the most important thing is being true to yourself. Like when you're living from that space, it makes turning off a 40,000 size Facebook group maybe not easy, but like, is there really any other choice?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because it is so true. and if I were to not, oh gosh, how do I talk about it? So once you start living from that place of just truth in every moment, as many moments as you can, while being human, and living from that deep place of truth and deep place of authenticity, there's nothing that you won't let go of. And that's intense.
Yeah.
That's a place that most people do not want to live. There's nothing that you won't let go of. And for me, like, I have worked and worked and worked and worked and worked and worked to live my life that way, and have watched things be stripped away because they were not in alignment with my soul. They were in alignment with some little part of Sabrina that needed security, like, yes, I will compromise this little part of my soul because I then get a paycheck that will put a roof over my head and food in my belly. Right? I will compromise this little part of my truth, my values, my core, so that I can keep my relationship, so that I don't end up divorced, so that, right? Where are we willing to follow our soul and where are we not? And that's an intent. Like, I use this funny line of, I share this with some of those who are closest to me. Like, I want to live as close to that edge as possible, as close to that edge of soul truth as possible. And when you commit to something like that, you have to be willing to let go of everything. You also have to be willing to open up to everything and expect totally unexpected, miraculous, crazy miracles to happen in your life. But like, the opening part doesn't come without the allowing everything to be let go.
Yeah.
Like, you don't get one without the other. Like, oh yes, give me the miraculous miracles and the new doors opening. Like, one door has to shut often for another one to open. And I think most people, and I know for myself, walking this path years past, was there were certain things that I could not let go of, that were just too personal, that I was, too much like base chakra, security, safety, tribal sort of things, or love, like, could not let go of, like, fairy tale. That was another one for me, like the fairy tale love story, just could not let go of that thing. And so overrode soul truths, overrode high truth, overrode my high self, however we want to call it, whatever terms we want to use. But I would override that system out of those little Sabrina attachments and needs and clinginess and fears and worries. And so for this to happen, it was a very long, process for me to be able to stand in a place and go. And I've stood in a place, Leanne, where it's not just letting go of a 40,000 member Facebook group. So right after that, I then stood in a place of letting go of the whole of ReWilding. If it is right to shut all of this down, to remove all of this content, to let everything go, I will do that. And I can have no attachment to that, to like let your child drown. Like, if it's right for my child to die, I have to be okay with that, because if the soul of my child is done here, I have to honor the soul of my child. And ReWilding has a soul, like it's its own energetic entity. And so really feeling into the soul of that being and saying, look, if you need to go, I can't get in your way. I have to grow up. Like, for me, your soul comes first. I don't care. Soul first, always. Soul first, the highest thing I can do for the soul. And that's for my team. That's for ReWilding as a whole. That's for my soul. That's reading into the soul of everything, of everyone, of wherever your focus is at. And then following that.
Oh my goodness. I was sharing with you just before we hit record that my podcast that I recorded on my own last week was on such a similar topic. And I called it something like killing off your inner darlings for a deeper life, something like that. And I was saying so many of the same things. And I think honestly, you are deeper into that journey than I am. You know, where I am at the moment is very much, there's going to be kind of primal needs, that kind of like things that call for your attention because they'll keep you alive. That I'm not saying you need to completely dismiss those. You know, yes, keeping this human body alive can be useful. And yet, I think in our modern culture, that's where all of our attention goes. All of it's around that kind of, and then it may not be obvious. It might be we've got so many layers added onto that it's not even obvious it's about our survival, but basically it is. Yeah. Or we acknowledge, yes, we may need to pay attention to some of those things, but the deeper life, the deeper intention, the deeper path is the path of the soul. And I feel like you're, you know, a step or two ahead of me on that, where you've kind of like, you know what, this comes first, foremost, even if it does mean this human body is going to die. That's kind of, you know, that's a possibility. I will let go of everything. But I just, you know, again, this is why I think your voice is so important here. This is the message that I think we're crying out for in these times, to hear that there is another way of living, a deeper intention, a deeper place to live from.
That's it. And so this is the really interesting part that what are those sayings of like, God's a jokester or God's a comedian or the universe is, I have a friend who always says, well played, universe, well played. And I'm kind of living one of those moments of just well played, really well played. And so going through all of this and really feeling into rewilding and really feeling what is the truth here. Is it over? You know, is this now a death? Is this a death? And it wasn't. So it was, no, that is actually a death would be the denial of the soul of rewilding. So death would be the dishonoring of the soul of rewilding. And so coming to that real truth of, okay, because then I got to a point, Leanne, where it would have been easier for it to die.
Yeah.
Then you have to check yourself and go, oh shit. Like shit, now there's a part of me that wanted this thing dead.
I so hear you on that.
And my God, my life would have been so much easier. You know, then you watch your little human bits go like, oh man, like boo-hoo me. Like now it's, and so it was hilarious of like, all right, get to the point of death. Okay, that's not true. That's not in the highest. That's not true. Okay, what is true? And then it was, okay, this is a death for rebirth and rewilding. Mm-hmm. So it's just that there's a shift in rewilding. There's a change happening in rewilding. And so the well-played part, Leanne, this just kills me how well played this is. I just still, because I'm so in it, like I'm very much in it of having no idea what the heck's going on, but also knowing that I'm pregnant. So having this like real feel, this energetic feel that I am pregnant with something. Right? I don't know if it's a human child. I don't know if it's a boy, if it's a girl. I don't know what color hair it has. It might be an alien. I don't know what I'm pregnant with something, and something new is coming. And I've felt that. And so to honor the fact that I don't get to just let my first child die, I have to still have the first child, but now have it so that it can do whatever it wants to do. And I can find the time and the space to birth a second child into the world. And what is coming, Leanne, is it's like the actual birthing of a body of work that, and it's so nebulous still, right? Because the baby's still like in my womb, so I still don't know. But to start to feel threads of it's what you and I are talking about. I just wrote like 5 pages on how I can help others or practices that I can give to others to follow soul to this degree. or to a deeper degree than what they're following soul in this moment. How to hear your soul, how to feel your soul, and then how to trust, how to move from that place constantly, right? Constantly, every moment. And it sounds totally insane, but that's my life and I live that way. Not everyone is going to sign up for living that way, but that's the part that's just like, oh my God, it's just too good because I'm living it and I'm working through it and watching the creation process. So it's also a lot about creation. So every choice that we make is a creation, right? The ripple effect that has on the whole of everything. Every choice is a creation. Where are you choosing from? Every single choice. My choice to do this with you is it's a creation. It has shifted the whole of everything. This conversation has opened up and shifted so much in rewilding that I can't even fathom what it will do. It has also shifted the newborn that's coming. And I don't even know how that is. And so living from this place of soul creation, soul discernment, decisions from the soul, living from the soul, moving from the soul, breathing from the soul, how to do that, how to get out of the way, how to get the wounds out of the way, how to get those survival, what you were talking about, those survival. And sometimes for me, heck yeah, I feel it's so much about survival. I also see so much of it as just autopilot. You're so on autopilot.
Not even a choice.
It's just this like conditioned response that's been, we've been running that same wiring for 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years, some of us. And so it's like, oh, wait, I need to break that old wiring, like pause, and then allow for a new wiring. And so how can we open up to the wiring of the soul? Like how can our whole body be wired to soul and move from soul, live from soul, breathe from soul? So that's my just hilarious, like divine comedy of wow, awesome. And I'm so in it and so in like the grunginess of it, the what do I have to let go of? What am I being called to open to see, to how is this being birthed, like little pieces, the amount of patience it's required, because this nugget drops in when it's ready. And then there's nothing. And trust the space of nothingness, right? Because the nothingness is something, but we want to,
yes.
do. Like some of us are such doers. And so no, there's just nothing. You sit and wait.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I could not love your newly forming baby more. It's close to my own heart, really is. And funnily enough, I don't have time to really kind of go in there, but it's everything you're talking about is so similar to what we're going through here at Primal Happiness, including a name change and very similar change of direction as well. So it's just like, oh, wow. I think it's just, this is the time. It really feels as though, and I know that we see everywhere the kind of thing that's for us, but for me at the moment, it's just like, this is the time, there's a kind of maybe a cultural soul that's saying like, now's the time for us to hear this.
I'm with you, Lynn. I'm so with you. Yeah. It's so, of course, this is why we're talking today.
Yes. Now we work it out.
Of course, we're going through something similar. Yeah. It's a setup.
Wow.
We've been set up.
Yes. Yeah. Well played, universe. Wow. Well, I suppose I definitely think we need to come back and do some kind of part 2. I don't know what that looks like, but wow. This has gone, to gorgeous places and like so much deeper than I was expecting. I think like, wow, where's time gone? Because I could so keep going, but we need to bring this one to a close. I'm a bit kind of like lost in the depths at the moment and like trying to like extricate myself. Wow. So normally at this point, I say to my guest, if people want to find out more about you and what you're up to, where should they go? Sabrina, what the hell do I say at this point?
That is an excellent question, Lynn, because I have no idea.
Wow.
Yeah. The best place for more right now is still ReWilding for Women. So it's really still just our website. We put up a brand new website a month ago. And that's where I'll still kind of announce everything and, the new work that's coming down the line. There's a website in the works. It's like the baby's room is being painted and you don't really know what color to paint the walls yet. So there's just this like shell of a website. And we're like, yeah, what color do you guys think?
Oh, gorgeous.
So all of that's coming down the track. But I mean, really, I'm probably going to start sharing stuff on Instagram around the new work first, just because that's just what's coming first. And that's just Sabrina Lynn with 2 N's. And then I think it's Sabrina Lynn Rewilding right now is where I'm at on Instagram. But otherwise, ReWilding for Women is still our place. I'll definitely share everything that's coming and changing. There'll be a new podcast. I think that's coming. I don't know. I'm waiting. I'm sitting in the silence waiting. So I know that's a really rough answer to give you, Leon, but
no, it's perfect.
Where it is right now.
I mean, it's literally like watch this space in all the ways.
Yeah.
Love it. Thank you so, so much. This has again gone. I knew this was going to be one of those shows that was both something for me personally, but I also thought again was something like really precious. I wanted to share with listeners. It's actually been that even more than I hoped for. So thank you so much.
Good, Leon. I was hoping we could pull the gold out of the wild ride that it's been. So thank you for what you do. It was beautiful as always. I just love it.
Thank you. So much love to you, Sabrina. What a gorgeous episode, and so generous of Sabrina to share all of that with us. Sabrina's description of the altitude she had during the events was so powerful. Her capacity not to take it personally and instead discover what was there for her and her team to learn is something that's testament to how deep she is in her work. This is a capacity, a degree of nervous system resilience that's available to all of us when we intentionally practice into it and cultivate it. There's a way of being where we're being clear, loving, and responsible that we become attuned to when we've spent time in intentional groups such as circles and council. This is a way of being that we can choose into being everywhere. And if we're a leader, create spaces that are intended to allow and honour this way of people showing up. Sabrina's attunement and reaction to noticing how this way of being was no longer the standard in her group is such a wonderful example of how we'll be called by life to keep tuning in and course correcting. Lastly, when we choose to live a life of soul, it requires us to be open to the magic of miracles and to let go of our attachments to a certain way of life that's worked until now. Sabrina's story hopefully shows that it's worth it. If you'd like to get the notes and links for everything we spoke about this week, hop on over to the show notes and they're at primalhappiness.co/episode 259. And if you're ready to go deeper with myself and Jonathan to reclaim your primal power and actualize your deepest gifts, go along to primalhappiness.co/go deeper. Or you can book a free exploration call with one of us at primalhappiness.co/exploration. And if you've enjoyed this episode and you would like to give back, firstly, just share it. If there's anyone you know that would benefit from it, just drop them the link, share it on social media or wherever you can get that episode in that person's ears. Deeply appreciate you doing so. And if you don't want to miss out on next week's episode, head on over to Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, or your Android or iOS app of choice and hit subscribe. That way you'll get each episode delivered straight to your device as soon as it's released. Thank you so much for listening. You've been wonderful. Catch you again next Tuesday.